Well, we all know that MS is different for everybody who has it, but I wonder what many of us might have in common. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam and I've been living with multiple sclerosis for 38 and a half years. I know that by now, if you've been watching my channel, you know quite a bit about my course of MS and how I've been living with it, but I think that we could all benefit from hearing from some other people who have MS and have been dealing with it. Particularly, I'm interested in something that seems to be pretty diverse across the board, and that is, what are the first symptoms that people have when they have MS? They don't necessarily know for many years that that's what it is, but as they look back on it, what were the first signs? I've gone across the web and I've tried to find some folks who have channels specific to multiple sclerosis and looked for the episodes where they did talk about their early symptoms. Let's see if we find anything in common among all of these folks. Well, we know that MS affects people all over the world. So as I was looking for different content creators, I specifically was looking for folks from different places, and both men and women. But as you listen to these 4 different folks that I'm going to be sharing with you, be thinking about your own first symptoms, how you first became aware that something was going on that just wasn't right and that you needed to go get it checked out. You'll first be hearing from a young woman who has a channel called Sarah's Living with MS. And I don't know for sure where she is, but I'm guessing it's somewhere in North America. And then you'll be hearing from a young man named Seb. His channel is called Life of Seb, and he is from the UK. And Lee Barassi has a good channel on multiple sclerosis. She is from Sweden, though at the present she's living in Spain. And then finally, Paul Baxter, who's also from the UK, has a channel called My MS Journey. So let's go ahead and see what these 4 creators tell us about what their first symptoms were with multiple sclerosis.
The very first symptom I noticed was that I was tired, exhausted all the time. No matter how much sleep I got, I could sleep 10, 12 hours a night, and I would still feel like I needed a nap. I was just always tired, and when it came to go to sleep, I just felt exhausted by the end of the day. I then had a cold. It was a pretty bad cold where I was blowing my nose a lot, and I developed a blind spot in my left eye, and my eye actually hurt when I touched it. So I thought I must have blew my nose like really hard and I hurt my eye. And it was like a black glob in the center of my vision everywhere I looked, and it wouldn't go away. And I thought I just probably injured it. So I ignored it. I didn't tell anybody about it. And I thought, if it doesn't go away in a month or 2, I will, tell my husband, go to the doctor, get it taken care of. But then it went away. So I thought, okay, yes, I really did just injure it when I was blowing my nose. I then started to develop severe neck pain, like a really severe stiff neck when I woke up in the morning. Now, it wasn't just because I slept funny, because it didn't matter how I slept, or it was just every day in the morning I'd wake up with that severe pain, and then it would go away like mid-morning. So that would go on. And then I just thought, well, that's really weird. Around the same time, I started to develop arm pain. That was like my arm would go numb and then would come back, like I fell asleep and then it woke back up, and it'd be severe pins and needles. And this would just happen on and off throughout the day. And I thought, I must have a pinched nerve. Like, that's gotta be what's going on. And those 2 things then went away. So I thought, okay, well, nothing's really wrong with me. I eat healthy. I get exercise. And then I started to notice, and this was very slow progression, that when I went for walks, I went for a lunch walk with my dog every day. It was about 30 minutes. And towards the end of the walk, I would notice that my knee wasn't really quite working the way it should be. It's really hard to explain. It was not pain. It just felt like I couldn't walk right. And I thought, I would think like, gosh, if I walked any longer, I might not be able to walk home. Like, it was just really weird. So that was like 30 minutes. And then it slowly progressed to 25 minutes, and then it was 20 minutes, and then that progression just kept going. And that's when, when I finally realized that I needed to do something about it, was when we went on vacation and we hiked up a cliff, and when we were hiking back down is when all of a sudden I just couldn't walk anymore. It didn't hurt. There was no pain. It was just like my knee kept giving out. My ankle kept turning to the side. It was like walking on the side of my foot. And I thought, something is really, really wrong. I have to go to the doctor.
So, going all the way back many years ago, back when I was a youngster living in London from the age of 17 to 20, I was living the party life in London, and it goes without saying that I was living a pretty unhealthy life. So by the time my stay in London ended, I had to go to the doctor because I couldn't walk more than 100 meters before getting exhausted and having to sit down. So I went to get tests done at a doctor's clinic. It turned out that I had very low vitamin levels and I had a definite imbalance, which of course may have been just because of the unhealthy lifestyle that I was leading. But it doesn't change the fact that it may have been a prelude of my MS. Considering the fact that after this episode of fatigue, I felt like I never really became myself again. I found myself getting more tired, and also, especially, I found myself developing weird symptoms. So that's why I consider that my first MS symptom, because after that came many more things that one after the other I disregarded. After that, I had many more symptoms. And as I remember, the first one that I had was that I was sitting in class and that I was reading from the textbook. And as I read, I would feel my face starting to tingle. And I thought that that was just me getting nervous because I used to be a very, very shy boy, very insecure. And if I had to read out loud, I would get insecure and I would get nervous. So I would get tingling all over my face. And I disregarded this completely, just thinking that it was because of nerves. After that came a symptom that I had completely forgotten, but that it was an eye doctor that reminded me of it, that they had it in their records, that I showed up at their clinic saying that I had a stain in my vision. And as he mentioned that, I remember actually that there was a time of my life that I was walking around seeing a dark circle in the middle of my field of vision. Again, I just discarded this as something weird. And being around 22, you're still a little bit in that age, at least I was, where you're a bit insecure of your body, sort of teenage-like. You're embarrassed about things your body goes through, and I just didn't want to talk too much about it. So I just discarded it, and it went away by itself. Then I had an episode of getting, again, but completely out of context, getting this tingling all over my face. So I went to the doctor made me puff out my cheeks, made me smile, and he was like, "You're fine, go home." And then I had another sign, which I mentioned in my previous video, of not being able to speak a language. So I remember distinctly this period of my life that I was embarrassed to meet with friends because I felt like I wasn't able to speak. I don't know if it came back, but I ended up just forgetting about it and never really doing anything about it. Then I had another symptom as well. I remember that all of a sudden, I found myself lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, but I couldn't because I had this constant urge to blink, even with my eyes closed. So much so that it prevented me from falling asleep. And if I woke up during the middle of the night, I would have this, what do you want to call it, this attack of blinking again. But I didn't take it very seriously. And then came 2011. At the time I was, 24, 25? In case any of you are wondering, at this day and age, I'm 33. So that was about 8 years ago that I had this thing that I went out for runs, and all of a sudden my foot started sagging as I ran. Little by little, I noticed that the symptom of the foot sagging started to happen when I walked as well. And all of a sudden I had to stop in the middle of the street because I was unable to walk anymore. Disregarded it because, well, what can I say? I was an irresponsible young man. And had I known that such a thing as MS could exist, I think I would have taken it more seriously.
I'm a mom of two. My oldest is 5 and my youngest is 1.5. And just after he was born, I started experiencing like restless leg syndrome. And this is a symptom that I have had since as long as I can remember, but coming and going, not like always. I remember that became very, very hard after he was born, and every night would be like so hard for me. I would have it during the day, but I would be so distracted I didn't think about it until the night came and everything was calm and I was alone with my feelings. And I remember having severe restless leg syndrome, and I couldn't sit still. I had to move constantly. I had to stand up and jump around to not go crazy. I would have like tingling sensation all throughout my body, mainly my legs and my arms. And then I've had a lot of pain in my left arm and shoulder, and that started very early on after he was born. But I will come back to that. So what happened that summer when he was about 5-6 months old, after the world closed down, we didn't get to see our family for a long period of time. So the first chance I got to go back to visit, I took. So last summer we went back to visit my grandparents and my dad, who still lives in Sweden. And I remember one day when we were in his house, we were living in his house, one of my big toes, like my left big toe, started to fall asleep, and I was thinking that this is very strange, what's going on with my toe? And I would touch the tip of the toe and it was completely gone. I couldn't feel it. It was completely sleeping, and I had no feeling in the tip of my toe. The rest of the big toe was more like numb and with tingling feeling, but the tip of it was completely gone. And that was super strange. And a few days later we headed back home. I traveled alone with 2 kids. It was quite stressful, but we managed to get home. And the following days I felt that sensation move up my foot and my legs. So it started off in the left side or the left leg, and then it moved over to my right leg as well. So by the end of that week, I had gone completely numb on the back side of my lower legs, and it was starting to move up my thighs and all the way up to my hips. And by this point I was getting quite scared, and I was telling Caesar, my fiance, my feelings, and I said, this is something super strange. I have never had this before. I think I have a trapped nerve or something. I think I need to go to a chiropractor to get adjusted, and maybe that will loosen things up. And he said, yeah, that's a good idea, you should do that. And so the following day I started to feel my legs very weak, and I was standing in my kitchen like resting my arms on the bar that we have, and I could feel my legs giving in underneath me. And it was super strange because I felt like the left leg wanted to go like backwards, like the knee wanted to bend the wrong way, while the right one wanted to bend forward. So I felt like my legs were doing something like this. And I was just like, what the heck is going on? I really need to go to the chiropractor. And then we were going down to the park, me and the kids, just after that. And I had to physically hold on to the walls to not fall over. I felt my balance was completely off. I felt weak in the legs, and I was thinking like, okay, do I need to remember how to walk? Like I was having the most weird thought process in all of this, and obviously I had no idea what this was signals for. But like I had no experience in this, so the symptoms for me had nothing to do with MS. I thought I had a trapped nerve. I thought I was suffering from complications postpartum. I have a bad back from before. I have scoliosis, and I just assumed everything was in correlation with that. So I was constantly like trying to calm myself down, saying like, no, but it's nothing. It's just a trapped nerve. I just need to go and see a chiropractor, and that will be it. And so walking down to the park, holding on to the walls, thinking, okay, how do I actually do to take a step? I thought that was normal. which is obviously is not. Coming back home, I would still feel the same feeling like when I was walking down the corridor, that I wanted to almost hold on to the walls. I came in and I told Caesar, like, my legs are starting to give in underneath me and I don't know what's going on here. And I had that symptom for additional, I don't know exactly, maybe a week. And okay, so I needed to go into the chiropractor. I went in the next day or 2 days later, I don't remember exactly. And I was describing my symptoms and she just told me that I should go to my doctor. She did not want to tell me why. She just said that you should go to your doctor and describe your symptoms because this is not normal and I would hate for you to need medical help and not receive it, basically. So she encouraged me to go to my healthcare provider. So I did. Actually, I contacted my back specialist because I was starting the process of trying to fix my scoliosis before my last pregnancy, and they had sent me to a rehabilitation place where they were gonna help me like with my back issues. So I called directly to there because he told me to contact him after my baby was born if I wanted to get help with my back. And so I did not go to my normal doctor. I just went directly there and I described my symptoms, and he said that he wanted me to see a neurologist and he wanted me to have an MRI. So he was fast on the ball there. I think that he knew from just watching my symptoms that I was describing and doing what I later realized is one of the tests they do when they check you for MS. He said, I want you to go to see a neurologist and I want you to have an MRI. And he didn't tell me why. I just said, okay. I still was believing that I had a trapped nerve and something similar. And this was back in June or July of last year. And then it took all the way to Christmas time before I got an appointment with a neurologist. But my main symptoms have been loss of sensation, mainly in my legs and neck. I have had a lot of like numb patches all over my body. I have severe arm pain. I feel very weak in my left arm, and this is what's the hardest for me because this pain does not go away, and it's very high on a scale from 1 to 10. I want to say it's like an 8, the pain that I'm experiencing in my arm, and it's constant, and that has been going on for more than I want to say almost like a year now. So I'm afraid that this is something that I'm gonna have to live with. I also have a few vision issues, mainly on my left eye, which I thought was due to lack of sleep and that kind of thing. I'm a new mom of 2, so I'm in postpartum and you're not sleeping. Everything that's going on with your body, you think it's normal. But that's still going on, so it's a weird feeling. I can see, but I feel like sometimes somebody's just covering my left eye, like I suddenly can't see clearly. It's like I have a film over it, and when I move to the side I feel like I can't really see that way. And then my balance problems. I have had a lot of weakness and fatigue. Again, when I was pregnant I was experiencing fatigue, and I remember thinking when my baby was born that symptom should go away, but it never did. So I don't know if my fatigue was because of MS or because of the pregnancy. Could be both. I've had a lot of headaches. Brain fog and memory issues is something that I've been struggling with for a long time. My back pain and a lot of stiffness in my body. Some days when I wake up in the morning I'm like a brick. I can't bend over, do nothing. So when I want to pick up my kid, it's like almost impossible, and I have to depend a lot on my legs. And that was a real issue when I had the first flare-up with the legs, when they were not supporting my weight, and I was just falling over all the time. So those were the symptoms that led me to seek help, and I was diagnosed properly a few weeks back. So I'm newly diagnosed, but I have been knowing about this for the past, I want to say since April. We have had the suspicion that it could be this, but I have after that had MRIs and a spinal tap done to confirm. So it's been a while coming, but obviously it's a big shock when you get that diagnosis.
Today I just want to talk through some of the early symptoms that I had and the signs that led to me wanting to be tested, and those first indications that there was something wrong. And they were all very small signs at first, and this dates back to probably October the year before, so October, maybe even slightly earlier than that, when I started noticing symptoms, October 2012. And they were all very, very minor things. The biggest sign that I had that there was something wrong was a tingling in my left foot, and it was almost having like a very low voltage electric shock permanently going through my feet, and it was about a couple of volts. So a lot of the time I barely noticed it, but it was always there. It was constantly there, and I would never have bothered getting it checked out if it weren't for the fact that I was near my GP one day. I had some spare time on my hands, so I just wandered in to see if I could get an appointment. And I said to him, this is probably absolutely nothing. There's probably nothing wrong with me at all, but I figured better be safe than sorry. So I went in and he did all the usual neurological tests, and there was absolutely nothing wrong. I said, it's probably nothing to worry about, and he agreed. About an hour later, he calls me. I'm just wandering through the city centre, I'm doing some shopping, and I get a phone call, and he says, this might actually be something quite serious. I'm going to send you for testing. I thought nothing of it. I just thought this isn't going to be anything serious. Over the following weeks, I started to get some more severe symptoms, started to get pains in the legs. I started to get numbness here and there. And I also started to get very poor balance. And if I think back to even further back, I was feeling a lot of fatigue that I didn't really think about too much. But in hindsight, I think I was probably exhibiting symptoms as early as April, May 2012. So I probably had MS a lot longer than I realised at the time. So my GP immediately got me in for testing. It was all very, very minor. It was all very small symptoms to begin with. And in hindsight, it's something that I should have taken more seriously at the time. But you never know until it's too late.
Well, yeah, okay, what I picked up on were a couple of different things. I'm sure you found others that I'd love to hear about. But one main thing that I heard is that person after person used the same word to describe some of the symptoms in those early years with multiple sclerosis.
That's really weird.
Weird.
This is very strange.
It was just really weird.
There was something wrong.
It's really hard to explain.
Another thing I noticed, and maybe it's because these are all young folks, but maybe not, nobody wanted to assume that it was something terrible. Everybody was assuming it was a pinched nerve, or because they just had a baby, or because they'd been sick, or something else. There was some other reason why they were having these symptoms. Even though they knew those were unusual symptoms, they were really slow to come to the idea that it could be something serious enough to go to a doctor, and especially because MS has this habit of coming and going. So, normally when there's something wrong with you, it hangs around or even gets worse. So yeah, I relate to this a lot because I was the same way. I was very slow to accept that it might be something serious. We're often told, there's nothing wrong with you. This thing that you're complaining about, it's going to go away on its own. Now I'll tell you, I'm not so sure that doctors these days would be so quick to do that if you presented with a neurological symptom. I really want to hope that doctors are more educated about multiple sclerosis and the early signs. But one thing that this video will hopefully impress upon you is that MS is so diverse in how it presents, especially in the early stages. Don't ignore it, and if you know someone else who's having kind of unexplainable symptoms, especially if they persist for any length of time, or if they come and go, encourage them to go see a doctor and get it checked. You just never know. And yes, I am not a huge advocate of running to the doctor with every little thing. In my day, maybe it wouldn't have made such a big difference. But nowadays, I think it might. I think there's enough therapies on the market now that will hit MS really hard in the beginning. And it might be worth at least talking to a neurologist, doing a little research, figuring out whether you might be a good candidate for one of those therapies. And again, if you're just starting out, or if you know someone who's having some issues, this would be a good time to maybe show them this video and talk about MS and what it does to your life if you let it go. It's not going to go away on its own. I think that's wishful thinking. We all would love that. We'd all love to wake up one morning and have it be gone. But I think after 38 and a half years, I'm fairly confident mine's not going to go away. But that's all I really have today. Again, leave me a comment. Let me know your experience with MS and your thoughts about this video. Would you like me to find more content creators and do another video like this to see what they have to say about their early days with MS, or anything else for that matter? But at this point, I'm going to just tell you, take really good care of yourself, and I'll see you again in my next video.